Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to Stately Von Manor, where Roger and I have returned. Because it's Wednesday. That means it's Epic Comic Book Wednesday. Every Wednesday, we'll talk about a certain comic book, graphic novel, or comic book subject. Steve Donoghue over on his channel will talk about the same comic book, graphic novel, or comic book subject. It is our world's finest team up that we do once a week. And this week, we're talking about Thor once again. So I am reading every issue of Thor from the first run of Thor, which started in the early 1960s. It ended in the mid-90s, 1996, I think the first run of Thor ended. And I'm reading every issue of those. And I recently finished Walt Simonson's magnificent run on Thor. Walt Simonson's run on Thor is considered by many to be the greatest run on Thor. And not only that, but one of the greatest runs in all of Marvel Comics history, and I would agree with that. It was simply wonderful, Walt Simonson's run. And right before Walt Simonson's run, the Thor comic book was, well, it was kind of mediocre. I think it was at its lowest point, really, in the issues leading up to Walt Simonson's Thor. And the jump in quality from those issues to Walt Simonson's first issue is kind of remarkable. But eventually all good things must end, and eventually Walt Simonson left the book. He had stopped drawing it for a while, and Sal Buscema was drawing the book. And Sal did a great job. He's no Walt Simonson, but Sal Buscema did a really good job on that book. So when that team stopped and left the book, you got to worry. And I was worried. I was like, well, is it just going to start sucking again, Thor, as it did right before Walt Simonson took over? But I need not have worried, because the issues that came right after Walt Simonson's Thor are these issues. The issues collected in this. This is The Mighty Thor War of the Pantheons. This is the 16th Thor Epic Collection, which collects Thor stories from 1987 to 1989. So the end of the 80s right here. Now this collects the issues of Thor. What issues? Thor issues Thor issues 383 to 400. This epic collection closes out on issue 400. So the team that took over from Walt Simonson and Sal Buscema was a team of Tom DeFalco and Ron Frenz. Tom DeFalco wrote the book. Ron Frenz is the artist, and Frenz is actually a pretty interesting artist, which we'll get to here in a moment. But I was pleasantly surprised reading this, because this is a good set of issues right here. Really good, actually. It is, of course, not nearly as good as what Walt Simonson did on his issues, particularly the ones that he illustrated. But it's pretty good. This is pretty good Thor. And I remember when these came out, the first few issues were not bad, but you didn't really know where this team was going when the first few issues came out. So I remember when they came out, I bought a couple of them, and then I kind of dropped it. And I didn't buy Thor after that. So I had never read most of what's in this epic collection. When they took over from Walt Simonson, there had been some major changes in the book. Thor was horribly injured in his battle with Hela and Hel. And to cover the scars on his face, he grew this big beard. He had changed his outfit, and now he wore this battle armor. So he had a different look. Odin was gone from Asgard. Odin disappeared battling Surtur, the fire demon. Balder the Brave is now the king of Asgard. There are a lot of changes. The Rainbow Bridge at this point was destroyed. And so Asgard was untethered from the earth and was kind of floating around in space somewhere. A lot of things going on. And so this new creative team came onto the book with all of those changes having already been made. And we were really curious, I think, to see where Thor was going after that. But this first issue that showed up, this is issue 383. This issue actually is an issue that takes place in the past. This issue is a story that takes place during Secret Wars. It's told in flashback. The Enchantress is talking to her sister, telling a story about something that happened between her and Thor during Marvel's Secret Wars miniseries. And it's not a bad story. It's pretty good, actually, but it doesn't really tell us where this team is going to be going forward. It does tell us, though, that the art is really good and that the writing is pretty good. But that's all we know at this point. So you'd think by the next issue, okay, they're going to get right into the new storyline. No, we get a one-shot issue about a future version of Thor. Far in the future, Thor has vanished from the Earth. And the Earth has become a tyranny run by corporations. And Thor's hammer has been found, but no one has been proven worthy enough to lift Thor's hammer. And the legend goes that if anybody lifts Thor's hammer, they will become Thor and will be able to save people, will be able to start a rebellion and save society and all that. But Loki is still lurking around in the future, and Loki's evil, and if a new Thor shows up, he wants to stop the new Thor. And lo and behold, this young guy picks up Thor's hammer and becomes the new Thor. Now, this is not a bad story. It's a pretty good one-shot story, but still, at this point, we have no idea where this team is going to be going. Going forward on the book. The next issue is another story that takes place in the past. Now, this one has a plot by Jim Shooter, and interestingly, Stan Lee comes back to script it. Eric Larson does the pencils. And it's a fight between Hulk and Thor. And as a fight, it's okay. But in my opinion, Eric Larson is not great in this issue. He's not great. This is early Eric Larson, of course, so I wouldn't be too hard on him, but it's still not great. Actually, this is not super early. When did Eric Larson start penciling? This is 1987. Anyway, yeah, I think this is early Eric Larson, and it's just, and the script is okay. It's all right, but it's nothing to write home about. But then finally in issue 386, there's Thor in his battle armor there. Finally, they're picking up the storyline where it was left in Walt Simonson's run. And the first thing we see is Thor shaves. Thor shaves because his injuries have been healed. They were actually healed at the end of Simonson's run. So finally, we get a continuation of that. Thor shaves. Thor looks normal again, but he's still got his battle armor. And the important thing that happens in this epic collection is the evil Seth, the Egyptian god Seth, who has a grudge against Thor, decides that the time is right to invade Asgard. And they're going to destroy Asgard, take it over, and from there, they're just going to go across the universe and destroy all the other Pantheons, and Seth will rule everything. Now, Seth, the god of death, is going to bring death everywhere. He's a great villain, actually, Seth. And this battle, this conquest of Asgard is set up early. And he sends out these monsters to the different godly realms, and Thor has to battle those, still in his battle armor. And so that's kind of cool. There's some cool stuff going on in these early issues. The artwork is pretty good. Friends is interesting because he has his own style, but it seems it always seems to be imitating someone else. You know, he had a very good run on Spider-Man, but when he got to Thor, these early issues, they kind of look like John Buscema. They kind of look like Sal Buscema at times. But still, you can see that Ron Frenz has his own style. In these early issues, Thor runs up against the Celestials, who we've seen before, these gigantic, all-powerful beings, which he has had no luck battling in the past, and doesn't have much luck battling in these issues either, but he tries anyway. He puts on his mighty battle armor, and he goes to battle the Celestials, who are about to seemingly destroy a planet that Thor ends up on by accident. And Thor ends up going on top of a Celestial, hitting his hammer on his head, and somehow he ends up creating a hole in the Celestial's head, and he jumps into his brain. It all makes sense. And it's all kind of strange, and it is kind of Doctor Strange-like, actually. And he finds a whole world inside the Celestial's brain. And he ends up battling these creatures, and his battle armor is destroyed during this. Now, this was deliberate because DeFalco and friends, I think, wanted to bring back Thor to his original outfit and his original look. And that might have been one of the reasons the first couple issues they did were from the past, so they could feature, well, one of those couple of those issues were from the past, so that Thor could be shown in his original outfit. And because that is what they're going to bring back after a mighty battle. You know, his hammer gets destroyed. It is, of course, given back to him by the Celestials. The secrets of the Celestials are revealed in this epic collection, you know. So that's interesting right there. But Thor eventually gets his outfit back. There's Thor in his original gear. And he goes to Earth. He is sent to Earth. But meanwhile, while he's sent to Earth, Asgard is being attacked by Seth. Now, a couple interesting things happen while Thor is on Earth. He hangs out with the Avengers for a while. He catches up with the Avengers. Captain America is no longer Captain America at this point. He's been forced to stop being Captain America by the government, so he takes on a new identity as the Captain. It was all kind of lame, but that happened. Now, Seth, the Serpent God, who does look great as a villain, sends some villains down to attack Thor while he's with the Avengers. And there's this battle, but this really important thing happens. And that is, during the battle, Thor loses his hammer. And so Steve Rogers, Captain America, reaches for the handle. But remember, nobody could lift Thor's hammer unless they are worthy. And very few people have been proven worthy. Beta Ray Bill is worthy to lift Thor's hammer, but that's pretty much it at this point. Beta Ray Bill and Odin. But not even thinking about it, Rogers reaches for the hammer and figures, I've got to try, right? And he is worthy. And so this is the first moment where Steve Rogers lifts Thor's hammer. It would be nice if he had been in his Captain America outfit at this moment, because this is a pretty important thing that happens right here. But still, it's good as it is. And this is, of course, a very Jack Kirby, Sal Buscema kind of scene where, you know, all the people are just flying around in the air after getting hit by Thor's hammer. It's a great moment. We have actually a few issues where Thor teams up with other characters. And so for a few issues, it's almost like a team-up book. where Thor, he fights with the Captain, he meets Spider-Man, and then Daredevil shows up in the book. We have the Black Knight that shows up, and towards the end of the book, Thor actually goes back to Asgard, and the Black Knight and some other characters follow Thor to Asgard. What are these guys? We have these new characters that show up called the Earth Force, I think they're called. Kind of lame. But they show up and they go back to Asgard because Seth has invaded Asgard and he keeps attacking. And all the Asgardian heroes are together to defend themselves against Seth, and they're all waiting for Thor to show up. And at this point, towards the end of this epic collection and these issues where we have the battle at Asgard, the artwork starts looking very, very like Jack Kirby. He goes full Kirby at this point towards the end of this epic collection. And when the god goes to war, and then one thing that happens at the end of this epic collection is Balder the Brave calls back the power of Thor, leaving Thor without his godly powers. He's still, a super tough guy, but he leaves him without his godly powers for a while because he needs the powers to defend Asgard, which Thor understands. He knows as soon as he feels his power going, what happened. And he's like, it must have been desperate if Balder did this. The artwork is great, and it's starting to look just so much like Jack Kirby. And that is an interesting, deliberate choice. Where how towards the end of this book, it just starts looking so much like Jack Kirby. And at a point, if you look at the pages, it's so like Jack Kirby. It's weird. We have Carnilla come back. And if you just look at this, your first thought is Jack Kirby, but it is friends doing Jack Kirby basically. And we find Odin. Odin returns in these issues. And Odin has been captured by Seth. Odin every once in a while is inexplicably captured, even though he's the most powerful god of all. Go figure. And Odin is not the only one that returns, because in the supersized 400th issue, the fantastic conclusion of this, where Thor gets his godly powers back, Asgard is under siege. What can possibly be worse? Oh, Suitor the Fire Demon returns. Look at that. Suitor the Fire Demon returns. And so we have a battle between Suitor and Thor, which is fantastic. It's just epic. It's everything you want a battle between Suitor and Thor to be. And this issue 400, I wish I had picked this up when it came out, because it was absolutely epic. And there you go. Full Jack Kirby friends artwork going on here. And it was just great. It's a little odd, like I said, that it's as Kirby as it is. I kind of wonder what it would have been like if Friends had kept the style that he had towards the beginning of this epic collection, when he was kind of being more John Buscema-ish. But that's okay. It's still pretty fantastic. And this is a fantastic conclusion to this set of stories. Seth turns into a giant snake. Odin kicks his ass, which is, a satisfying conclusion. At the end, Odin has returned. Thor is in his original outfit. Status quo has returned to Thor. Except for the Rainbow Bridge is still broken at this point. But right after this point, Odin starts acting like Odin, get mad at Thor for wanting to hang out on Earth, all of that stuff. It was a deliberate return to the feeling of the Jack Kirby Stan Lee era. And even some of the covers were just so from that time. Let me see if I can get a good example. Like, you look at this, that's a Jack Kirby cover from the 60s, only it's not. You know, this is the kind of thing that was being done during these issues. It was a deliberate throwback to those 1960s Jack Kirby comic books. And it was really well done. So I was impressed by this volume. And I should probably shut up because I've gone on and on about these issues. But it was a completely satisfying new run to follow up one of the greatest runs in all of Thor history, which is impressive. That is an impressive thing. And next week, hopefully, I will get my Thor omnibus in the mail, my Walt Simonson omnibus, and I can finally talk about the Walt Simonson Thor. So catch me next week for that. I will catch you next time.